It almost makes me wonder as an artist, if you write a song like that that's like that perfect, do you just go, oh, well, I'm never going to do that again? Or are you just constantly trying to chase that
dragon
again?
of perfection that is that song. I mean, it just makes everything, sitting here with you in the radio studio listening to that, just everything's like so still and you could shatter it. I just love how that can just, it's so powerful, it's so moving, and every just note, the way he sings it is beyond perfect.
Right. But of course, if you're Brian Wilson, you probably hear it and go, here's 10 things that are totally wrong with this track that I could have done better, right?
Yeah, no, that's how an artist listens to their music. They just hear what's wrong with it.
I mean, it's like, you could look at Star Wars and think it's perfect, and George Lucas has been tinkering with it for, 30 years, basically.
That's why I love talking to a band after a show. You'll think it was a great show, and they'll be mad that they missed a note or forgot a lyric. But the audience likes that because it's real and it's immediate. Or if you listen to Johnny Cash, the Folsom Prison Blues album, he's doing this countdown about this guy hanging, and he gets the numbers wrong. And it's like one of the greatest songs, but he's probably was upset that he got the numbers wrong.
Yeah, but sometimes it's the mistakes that really make it
that
great.
Make it authentic. People want that experience.
Yeah, people like stuff that is real.
But that is a song with no mistakes. God only knows. It's perfection.
We're talking to Neil Strauss. He's doing the Takeover. Neil has written some great books. Your friend's got a book about Brian Wilson going on. We were talking about, like, when you sit down to write, do you figure out, okay, well, what's the best thing to write about? Do people come to you with pitches? Like,
yeah, I know, it's funny because the thing about doing books with artists is just because someone's famous or popular, you like them, doesn't mean they'll do a good book. So I'll tell you what, when I sat down with Motley Crue to write The Dirt, these were the deals we had. Deal one is you have to say everything. You can't hold anything back. So I've talked to artists who wanted to do things, and I said, literally, if you're not going to show everything, if you're not going to put things in there that maybe you're embarrassed about, not admit when you're wrong, not do things that, as soon as someone says, I'm worried that my kids may read this, I won't do a book with them. You can't try and, it's going to be boring. The audience is going to know you're holding back. So that's number one. The other deal.
What would be the point of that if you're Motley Crue, by the way? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Most of it's on video already. Like, your kids are going to find out.
right, exactly. You can't hide anything in the world anymore.
No.
And so then the other thing was each member wrote a different section of the book. And I said, you can't read anyone else's section till it's done, and you can't change anything in someone else's section. So if Tommy Lee is upset about something in Nikki Sixx's section, he can respond to it in his. So there's this funny war where people are reading the book and finding out that one band member slept with their wife that they never knew before.
Oh, man. So you could write basically a book after the book if you wanted, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of which, there is a Dirt movie in the works, right?
Yeah, there's a Dirt movie. This guy, the guy who directed Jackass, Jeff Tremaine, is directing it. So we'll see what happens, Hollywood. But the screenplay is really good. They really captured the insanity of Motley Crue's lives in that book.
Are you involved in it at all? You get to just kind of sit back and observe?
I'm just there to help out. Usually I just write and let everyone else deal with the consequences. That's the great thing about writing other people's books. Like, you sit there in the green room while they're like, have to answer to killing people and, people being killed, and you're like, you just get to enjoy it.
I like to do that too. Just sit back, watch the carnage.
Right, because we're just
crack
sitting there.
Open a Heineken.
Yeah, because we're just sitting there on the break talking about, Brian Wilson and all these artists and Joe Walsh and all these people with these self-destructive lives. And the fun thing about being a music journalist is you get to step into that world, but you don't have to stay there.
Yeah, and man, you have visited some really just fascinating worlds with some people who have done just crazy, crazy things. All right, we'll talk more about that as we go. But speaking of crazy, crazy things, we're going to play a Harry Nilsson record now.
Right.
Now, Harry is a guy, to me, if you listen to the music, you may not have a sense of just sort of how wild he was, with the Lost Weekend, where basically he went on an 18-month bender with John Lennon and through the streets of Los Angeles.
Yeah, have you seen that documentary? And everyone listening should watch this documentary if you love music, the Who is Harry Nilsson?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, you got to watch it. It's a great documentary on many levels. And here's a guy who completely just one of the greatest songwriters, voices of all time, and I'm sure so many people know some of his songs, who just basically destroyed his voice with drugs and alcohol, like just destroyed his career. And this happens to people in LA, and I know you've seen it. They get too busy hanging out with famous people to work on their own careers. Yeah. So he just became friend to the Beatles instead of the artist, that he should have been. Again, he wrote and recorded some of the best songs, but just went off. You got to watch this documentary. It's so good. Who is Harry Nilsson?
That was actually my plan when I moved out here. Just be friends.
Hang out with famous.
Yeah, and I fell into this.
Let me ask you. I'm probably going to ask you a personal question. Is there like a person, like the most famous person you're the closest with?
Oh God.
There's a reason why I'm asking.
I wouldn't say there's one. No,
Right.
I mean, honestly, doing this, like,
Right.
you encounter enough people I try to keep it a little bit separate because sometimes like if you really like a band or something and you find out a little bit too much, you know,
because you become. I was talking to people who there's some people in LA who are professional, famous people's friends, right? And basically, you're at their beck and call all day. Like basically, they call you at 2 a.m. I remember when I was doing the book with Marilyn Manson, right? Like he would call at like 2 a.m. He'd say, "Hey, my bus driver's over. We're doing these and these drugs. Come over right now." And I was doing the book, so it's my job. I get paid to be the famous person's friend. And you would come over, and next thing I knew, it would be like 5 a.m. and we're sitting there with his bus driver recording like really obnoxious songs on a 4-track that they leaked would probably destroy everybody's career. Next thing I know, it's 7 a.m. We're outside this bus driver's tour bus, and he's showing us like illegal porn from Japan. Next thing I know, we're in a car. The bus driver's giving us each $20. Tour bus drivers are the worst, by the way. Giving us each like $20 and sending us to Disneyland. And so then we're in the car, trapped in rush hour traffic in LA because it's day by now, and obviously drugs have been done. And we're trapped going to Disneyland, and that's just what happens. You can't really have a life or a career because you end up on these crazy adventures with irresponsible people.
Yeah, well, and you know, I always feel like when we have a band in here that artists kind of live in this world with its own sort of rules, and it's just so different from regular people's world.
It is.
Right? And you're like the emissary that's like sort of like trying to be the ambassador for the artist to come back to regular people world and try to ask the questions that regular people want to know.
Right. And you really got to go along with the whole. I remember, and then sometimes when you get I remember like that day at Disneyland, I remember Twiggy Ramirez from Marilyn Manson he was just going to do a few lines of cocaine before he went to sleep. Just a few lines before he went to sleep.
That is a great plan.
And so I remember I had to like take him by the dreadlocks and like pull his head back from it just to be like, no, man, we just got to sleep. That plan's not going to work out that well.
I'm going to just do a few lines of cocaine before I stay up for 7 hours.
Exactly.
All right, speaking of, we'll get back to Harry Nilsson because then we're going to take a break.
Oh, wait, one thing about this song.
Okay.
Got to listen to the beginning because the beginning he was inspired to compose it listening to the busy signal on a telephone. I never realized that before I watched the documentary. So listen to the beginning of this song and think about the busy signal on a phone.
All right, it's KLOS.